If you're new to this call series, welcome. This is your first time. Be sure and keep the chat open. We'll be using that to interact with all of you today. You'll be able to ask questions of our special guests once we bring them on board. If you're new to I4CP, know that we are the Institute for Corporate Productivity. We're a human capital research firm. We discover the people practices that drive high performance. We mean something fairly standard by that: revenue growth, market share, profitability, customer satisfaction. We like to dig into your human capital practices, human resource practices through our various studies and try and tease out what high-performing companies, that sort of top quartile, are doing truly different than maybe lower-performing companies out there. We're a membership-based organization, so if you're with one of our several hundred member organizations, great to have you with us on the call. If you're not with a member organization but would like to learn more, just reach out to anyone at I4CP and we'll be happy to get that information to you as to what that entails. You can also just visit our website, use the form at i4cp.com, and we'll respond quickly. You see here just a small sampling of some of the member logos. As I said, we have several hundred member organizations in our community. They range from very large companies like 3M, Microsoft, Amazon, Nike, and others. You see they also range across all different industries, market verticals, from retail, manufacturing, banking, finance, high tech, you name it. My name is Tom Stone. I'm a senior research analyst here at I4CP, and this week I'm joined by my co-host, Nina Holtzberry, Director of Member Engagement. Good morning, Nina.
Good morning, Tom.
Good to have you with us. You're often hosting on some of the weeks when I'm not. This is a rare treat to have the two of us as co-hosts together.
Yeah, really looking forward to it.
Great to see so many people still filing in. Great to have you with us. As I said earlier, keep the chat open. We'll be using that for Q&A throughout the session today. Just a few reminders. I want to note what's noted there on the right. This is Next Practices Weekly. So coming up on August 8th, we'll have Mindy Geiser from Savers. Myself and another colleague, Molly Lombardi, will be talking about upskilling on August 15th. And then we'll have Felicia Robinson from Boys and Girls Clubs of America on August 22nd. So some outstanding sessions coming up each Thursday. We always meet at the same time, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. So by registering, you can get the entire call series on your calendar, and then you can join whichever ones fit your schedule. A couple of other quick reminders. Every March, we have our big in-person conference called Next Practices Now. Registration is now open for this conference. So if you use the link that's over in the chat, you can save $300 if you register by November 15th. This is really a powerful and unique conference in the industry. It's for HR leaders, HR professionals. There are no vendors, no consultants at this conference. There's no trade show, no expo, no one selling you things in the hallway. Just great, outstanding speakers. And we'll be outlining and announcing some of the speakers for 2025 in the coming weeks and months. But expect it, like in past years, to be a mix of some CEOs, former CEOs, obviously chief human resource officers, other heads of HR functions, chief learning officers, talent officers, et cetera. And we have parties in the evening. It's a great event. It's held each year in Scottsdale at the Fairmont Princess. And this year it'll be in early March, so hopefully it won't interfere with spring break or other travel that you might have. Last announcement before we get to our main event for today, we've just launched a survey on the people analytics function. This is sort of a benchmarking study. We haven't done a major study on people analytics in about 5 years, so it's high time we did so again. It only takes about 10 minutes to do. I realize many of you on the call might not be the heads of people analytics at your respective organizations, so if you can take the link that's in the chat, share it over to the right person. We'd love every organization on the call today to be at least represented in this study. So please, 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 please do share that with your people analytics lead, and we look forward to their input. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to you, Nina, to facilitate the conversation with our three guests today.
Thank you so much, Tom. Well, we're very excited today to welcome the Zachry team to share more about their Next Practice Award finalist submission. It's a program that's called Functional Spanish. And if you have a next practice that you've been working on, we would love to find out more about that. So I know that Zeta's going to share a link in the chat for you there. And she's also going to share the case study so you can get even more detail on the conversation that we're having today. This has definitely been a very Zachry-full week here. I got to see Jason and Abel in person as we kicked off some culture work with them here in Bozeman, Montana. And yesterday, our CHRO here, Jason, joined the Up Next cohort, our CHRO development program that we do at I4CP. And so we are just so excited to spend this much time with our member, Zachry. So joining us today here, we've got Jason Westenskow. So he's the VP of Human Resources, and then the program directors of Functional Spanish, Abel Luna and Eli Embleton. Jason, Abel, Eli, welcome. So great to see you again. Jason, before we jump into this incredible program that y'all have created together, could you just tell us a little bit more about Zachry to folks maybe who aren't from Texas and aren't as familiar with your brand?
Yes, absolutely. It's great to be here this morning. Buenos dias a todos. And Zachry is a company that has 3 distinct businesses. So we're in the hotels. Perfect. You can see by the 3 logos up top, and then the 3 people that are represented in this. We're in the hotel business. We're also in construction, heavy highway construction, and then aggregates or materials. So we have 3 different businesses, but we're united by one culture. And you can see the values below. They're part of our culture is the every person matters. Today we do together we can do great things, and this is more than a job. So this one culture unites us. And something else interesting about our company is 2/3 of our workforce is Hispanic. So something that's critically important to us is to connect and show respect to all our employees. And that's really what led to this program that's been designed called Functional Spanish. So excited to turn it over now to the directors of the program, Abel and Eli, to talk to you about the program.
Thanks, Jason. Abel and Eli, I know that you've got a great video queued up for us here, but just to start introducing Functional Spanish to the audience, do you want to tell us a little bit more about what the program is?
Yeah, so what you're going to see in this video is we took a group of our employees, and this is probably the 4th time we've done this on a 2-day immersion. And we typically do it at a company ranch, but this time in the video, we did it at one of our hotels in San Antonio. So we've got a culturally rich place in San Antonio where both cultures, and so this is US and Mexico, kind of meet, and you can get the food, you can get the art, you can get dancing and the wonderful things that we share, and we can get people immersed in it. And so this video is going to be us teaching, but also just having a good time with a group of people, making it fun so that it's less difficult to try. Most people are embarrassed to practice language because it's frustrating. We're not as good as we'd want to be. We don't want to make mistakes in front of other people. And so this is just us trying to break those barriers down.
All right, let's roll with the video. It's a good one. Whoops.
Beyond going to school, there's another and a better way to learn language, and that is to immerse yourself as much as possible in the culture and the language. The one thing that makes us different is that we do this as a group. We make it so that it's fun, and what fun does is that it lowers this threshold for people to try, but it's the environment that we create that allows them to apply it.
I think they made it easy because there was a lot of interaction. You're cooking and you're learning the words as you go, and you might not know it perfectly the first time, but eventually, like, the more practice you get, it just starts to like click and you're not even thinking.
It gets everybody on the same page and working together. The learning has been simple. You know, you're here and you don't even know that you're really learning a new language.
I kind of came in thinking it was going to be this big scary thing that was going to make me do a lot of things that I was going to be really uncomfortable doing. That wasn't what this was at all. The way that they developed the program made it a way that was easy to kind of feel comfortable to lean into the challenges that they presented to us while we were here.
Because it gives us the ability to think of people other than ourselves, especially in a situation where the people that enable us to have jobs behind a desk are the guys that are working and girls that are working in the field. A lot of them are the reasons we have jobs at the office. So this is important to show them the appreciation that they deserve by giving them the respect of being able to speak to them. We owe it to ourselves to get outside of our comfort zone to try new things, and this allows you the ability to do that.
When you show your people that you care, they want to do better. By you understanding their background and what's important to them, really turns things upside down from how they have been historically, where people came into a job, didn't understand the language, didn't understand the culture, and our attitude was, well, you came here, so you have to figure it out. That's not what this is about. This is about showing that you care about them and want to know who they are and where they come from.
When our participants leave here, they've gone through an experience. It's been with the group. They've been able to study and learn in a whole new fashion that they're probably not used to, but they've built confidence. They've actually done something. They've learned, they've applied it, and they have a framework for continuing on. I am totally confident that as our participants leave, that they will continue. We're super excited for everyone that goes through it because we know that they will be able to move their skills to a functional level.
Well, that was like such a great mini immersion into what looks like an immersive experience. And you can see the fun and the functional in your program. Abel, could you tell us a little bit more about the background? So at the beginning, y'all shared that you have 2/3 of your population, of your workforce, is Spanish speaking. Could you just give us a little bit more insight into that? And what was the purpose behind creating Functional Spanish?
Yeah, thank you, Nina. Primarily the main purpose was really bridging the gap between our Spanish-speaking workforce and our English-speaking workforce. I get the opportunity to manage the construction side of it from an HR perspective, and as you can imagine, in our industry, as Jason mentioned, we have a large Spanish-speaking workforce. So it was really designed to try to bridge that gap and try to lower the threshold, as Eli mentioned, to allow that communication to flow both ways. And then also I'll share some more insight in just a little bit with the Spanish-speaking foreman that we had that was kind of preventing them from moving up to the next level for us is something that we identified.
Yeah, so, diving into that, it sounded like you had some listening strategies that you guys were doing at Zachry to identify, what was preventing maybe some of your Spanish-speaking employees from moving up. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we went out and spoke with our crews, our foremen, and we're trying to figure out what's preventing them from getting to the next level. And just from some stats to share with you is we had about 62% that were Hispanic at the foreman level. And then when you look at our superintendent level, it was about 61% that were white/other, right? So we were trying to identify why is that and why are the Spanish-speaking foremen not wanting to get to the next level. So it was interesting as we went through and surveyed each one of them, it was the language barrier is really what was holding them back. And, so this is where we started Functional Spanish.
Thanks. Thank you, Abel. Eli, when I was getting the opportunity to learn a little bit more about Functional Spanish, there were a few key things that you brought up about the goals of the program. Do you want to share with our audience a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so the intention of the program, it's obviously this comes from the heart. We're trying to connect people together, and there's safety concerns in there, and we'll talk in a little bit about what you do to create environments, but the idea wasn't originally to help people get promoted. It was just, hey, let's close this language gap. Let's make people feel like they belong and help them in whatever way possible. A natural consequence is if those barriers they don't exist, then the promotions happen and, you get lots more engagement. So that's part of the impetus of creating it. One structure that we'll talk about is just, it would make sense for most people. Why don't you just teach everybody English? And from listening and hearing what's going on, a lot of folks that seemingly only speak Spanish already come with a lot of English knowledge. And figuring out that if they knew that an English speaker was trying to speak Spanish, they felt more comfortable trying themselves. And so our first attack was, hey, let's go teach our English speakers a little bit of Spanish, not becoming fluent. It's a long-term process, but if you get to a functional level, then people start feeling comfortable enough to try together. So that's kind of what started it.
So you're bringing a sense of equity by creating a common language between both parts of your population. And it sounds like that's really contributing to a sense of belonging across the board.
Exactly.
Well, thank you. Before we dive into more of the program specifics, Eli, I know that you had a few questions from the audience here, and with your learning background, I know that you wanted to make this an interactive experience. So let's dive into your questions.
Yeah, so let's get some engagement. Just quick questions. How many took Spanish in high school? And then how many of you are working on a Duolingo streak or any other learning app that you're getting your 5-10 minutes a day? And then how many of you still can't order tacos?
So you should have a poll window that's opened up. If you don't, apologies about that, but most of you should be seeing it. There are votes coming into these 3 questions. You may need to scroll down to see the 3rd question, and votes are coming in. We'll close this here in just another few seconds.
Excited to see the results on this. I know that my Duolingo streak keeps breaking. Karen Laidlaw over here has a 6-year Duolingo streak. That is impressive.
I think that makes you a super user.
Absolutely. So Eli, it looks like we've got just over half the audience, 58% took Spanish in high school. You've got about 20% are working on a Duolingo streak or maybe something else. And then how many of you still can't order tacos? Tom, you might have to help me interpret this data because we've got 37% saying yes and 63% saying no.
Yeah, that's impressive. A third still struggling with that. That's a funny one. And yeah, it shows the popularity of Duolingo as a platform that 1 out of 5 folks on this call, play it and use it and have a streak going.
But yeah, it looks like, significant background of folks have taken some level of Spanish, but when it comes to getting one of our most popular and favorite food items, kind of still can't make that order happen. What do you think about that, Eli?
So that was my experience as well. I didn't do very well in many subjects in school, but I liked Spanish. It was fun, and I did all right. I got the grades that I needed, but when I wanted to go speak to somebody, I was having trouble, and it became noticeable to me that passing a test was not going to help me in the real world. I didn't have the functional skills to do it. So I think what's interesting is there's this desire. Lots of people want to use what's available, and there's lots out there. There's lots of learning programs, and they're amazing. And if that would do it, we would be satisfied. But there's still one more element about, we've got this knowledge here in the head somewhere. How do we get it out so that we can form connections with people to complete the tasks that we need to do? So that's really good data. It was fun. Thanks.
I've got to share a little bit something more about Eli to our audience here, and that is Eli speaks about 6 different languages, if I recall correctly. Eli, you'll have to share with the audience because I'm sure that also contributes to your approach to functional Spanish.
Yeah, sometimes I think that's the least interesting thing about me. I do speak 6 languages. It doesn't make me an expert or anything. I think what it does is that I've made more mistakes than most people. I know what it's like to be completely frustrated, trying to make life work. I did move to South America by myself when I was 19 years old. And some people say, immersion is the greatest thing. And it is. But in the beginning, if you don't know anything, it's soul crushing. It's hard to look at somebody and you just get frustrated and you speak louder and you use more hand gestures. But there's that desire we have as human beings to make connection with other people. So I am kind of a geek, and I do study languages because I enjoy it. But the thing I enjoy most is if I do travel or if I have another coworker that speaks a different language, I have the tools to reach out to them and make those connections.
I think it probably puts your empathy level on like an 11 out of a 10 scale, at least in the language arena.
Yeah, and just as a fun practical thing, if you go visit another country that speaks a different language, it's fun to see all the beautiful sights, but humans are really neat people. And if you get to speak their language, they can show you and open up a whole new world. So on an empathy level, I don't claim any more empathy than other people, but my eyes have been opened, not just by going places, but by being able to engage with the people that are there.
Thanks, Eli. I know that we have another poll that we want to launch, and this is to get some insight from everyone that's here on the call about how language barriers might present at your organization. And so this is a multi-select. Just let us know, whether you have language barriers or not, whether you have a large portion of your workforce that might not speak English. And then, do language barriers affect your productivity, and do language barriers affect your safety? So we'll give folks just a little bit of time, and thanks for launching that poll, Tom.
Yeah, and the answers are coming in. We'll give folks another 15 seconds or so, and this is a multiple select, so feel free to choose all that apply. Great to see some of the comments coming in the chat as we're having the conversation. Appreciate that, everyone. Feel free to ask questions as we go along as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share out the results.
All right. So Eli, Abel, Jason, just reading this out to you and the audience, looks like 40% of the audience does not have a language barrier, which means we've got 60% of the folks here on the call that do have language barriers in their workforce. And 20% of our audience has a large portion of their workforce that doesn't speak English. More than 40% say that language barriers do affect their productivity. And I think this is also really critical. 24% of our audience says that language barriers affect our safety. And I know that, safety and productivity are things that are at the forefront for everyone. Eli, what do you think about this data?
It tracks with what we've been experiencing. We're looking at ways that just small things that get in the way. It seems like an insurmountable task when you've got such a huge barrier just between the way you can talk to somebody, but it doesn't have to be. And so it's interesting to see that how many people do have and are facing these issues.
There's an interesting comment in the chat too, from Sharon that said for them, language barriers don't exist within their workforce, but it does impact their patient population. So in their case, if it's healthcare, their customer population. So that would be another driver. Even if you don't have as much of a mixed workforce as you all do at Zachry, think about your customer base.
Yeah, absolutely. I think building that connection between the customer or your worker, it's all around creating that sense of belonging and connection. Going back to the fact that, about a quarter of folks are saying that language barriers affect their safety. Eli, I imagine that in the construction space, that safety is at the forefront. Is that something that was a strong consideration in terms of how you help bridge that language gap with functional Spanish?
Absolutely. And again, the beginning point of functional Spanish started with safety. And so we were trying to find ways to brief our employees, but also just get them involved. We have a monthly safety training program. And so we go out to the field and we talk every month about a different safety topic. But if you're only doing it in English, you're missing out on 2/3 of the people that really want to get it in their language. And then I had an experience pretty early on working at Zachry, and this wasn't one of our companies. It was a company in Corpus Christi, Texas. And what we found in the news was this interesting story where there were two gentlemen. There's a foreman and one of his crafts workers, and they needed to go underground to do some work. And the foreman, being American, only spoke English, and his employee only spoke Spanish. And the way they communicated was the foreman pointed at the guy and he pointed at the hole. And what the employee understood was, I'm supposed to go down in this hole. Makes sense. They knew that the oxygen concentration there was below 19.5%, which for all intents and purposes, that's immediately dangerous to life and health. And the foreman knew that he had to have special equipment. It looks like scuba gear. And he was actually turning around to get the equipment to hand to his employee. But in that gap, the employee just, all he understood was, I'm supposed to go get in this hole. And so he went down into the hole. Moments after entering, with that level of oxygen, he passed away. And it doesn't take fluency. It just takes somebody to say, like, un momento, por favor. Like, just wait one moment. And you don't have to have all the instructions, but that a simple phrase would have saved a life. And it's just simple instructions like that throughout anything. I mean, the majority of construction injuries happen to our hands. And we kind of think that's a small thing, but I've got 4 children and I like to throw a baseball after work with them. If my hands don't function the way they're supposed to, that affects quality of life. And our core values, like, this is more than a job. Like, we're glad that you can do wonderful things and build bridges, but if you don't go home the same way that you showed up to work, we're not doing good work. And so I think safety and just communicating general information it's so essential.
Well, thank you for sharing, what the worst case example can be and how an investment of time and building connection is a way to prevent that. A lot of our research at I4CP obviously talks about the importance of building connection, community, and how belonging and inclusion are major drivers for productivity. Abel, I would love to hear from you around how this program was designed to create, a culture of belonging and the connections that you are building with functional Spanish.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up as a migrant worker, back and forth between Guadalajara and the Lubbock, Texas area. And one of the things that my mother, she spoke English and my father spoke Spanish, would always tell us is you got to learn both languages, right? So one of the things that we would do is there's a game that we used to play as a family, and it's called Loteria. So I'm not sure if y'all know what this game is, but we'll get an opportunity in a little bit to dive into it a little bit. But this was a way that my mother would help us learn Spanish, because we were primarily around her, so she only spoke English to us. But then, we would transition into playing this game. Part of playing this game, for those of you who have played the game, is our grandmother would make us clean beans, and that's what you use to mark the game was beans. So we sat around a table as a big family and played with this game to help us learn the language a little bit. But then at the same time, we were also helping our grandma clean the beans that eventually became our dinner for the next few days, right? So it was a fun way that my mother would teach us the Spanish side of it. Also, just being around the food, being around the music, that was, as you got to see some of that stuff in the video. So one of the interesting comments in the chat here that really is striking to me is, we're creating shared experiences, and that's what we're doing here with Functional Spanish. And what we wanted to do is bring a little bit of the culture from Loteria into the program. So we developed an app called La Loteria, and then we also have hard copies of the game as well that we use, and that has become part of our culture here at Zachry as well. When we introduced Loteria, it is now played at our company picnic that we have every year. It's part of what we do. At job sites during meetings, folks get play the game, and it's just again just those shared experiences that we're giving across the organization, and that's where Loteria was created as a component to Functional Spanish.
That's incredible, Abel. I think I saw a comment earlier on that, one of the most important things about maintaining your language skills is having that continue. And, similar with cultural programs, right? When we do programs that push a certain part of culture, it can't just be a drop in the pan. So you've got this incredible 2-day retreat, but then you're also keeping the language skills and the connection to the retreat, to the immersive experience going throughout the year.
And Nina, maybe just a little more context. I sort of figured, hey, I know Spanish, I can create a course. And we did. We created a course called Functional Spanish, and it's got 4 levels. And I figured, hey, people will study, they'll get it, it'll be great. But it didn't grab hearts and minds like I wanted it to. And then as soon as I understood like how well Abel knows culture and Abel knows people like nobody else. And he just knew that Loteria would be this great bridge. And so we just changed the entire idea of Functional Spanish from like a learning-based internet step-by-step thing to playing games together as a company. And that sort of shifted the way we looked at Functional Spanish and created what it is today. We still have an online learning program that people use. It's got 4 levels in it where it's task-based, so you're trying to accomplish something every time. But that key, the genius of Abel, was bringing in La Loteria and mixing culture with the language, and that broke everything open.
It's a great example of something that's been a trend in this case, L&D. There's similar trends in other areas of HR. Gamifying or gamification of learning has been around for several decades, really, as a trend, but it often can fall flat if it's not done sort of intentionally and in an integrated way, or in this case, like with a cultural connection to it. So great example.
And I know that we have something, we have a treat for the audience. So we've talked a lot about Loteria, and we're all going to get the chance to play this together. And I think one of the important things to point out, and I know Abel's going to go over the rules with us, you don't have to speak any Spanish to be able to participate. But this is just a great sneak peek into the language experience, Functional Spanish, that Zachry has put together. And so if you have your phones, go ahead and scan the QR code. And thank you, Zeta. You've made it easy for us by just dropping a link here in the chat.
And then Abel, should I be, once folks here have had a chance to scan this, should I stop sharing?
Yeah, I can share my screen if you'd like, and then we can transition to
there you go.
Playing maybe a few rounds of Loteria and see how our audience enjoys this. So let me. Is everyone able to see my screen there?
Yes, it's up now.
All right. Let me know when I should get started, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So just real quick, this is part of the app that we developed, and this is one of the tools that we use as part of our team learning a new language. Just real quick, the set of rules, if you click on rules there, it's one participant is the dealer, which will be me, and the rest of you are players. So each player selects a card on their board that the dealer deals out, and the first player that gets 4 in a row wins Loteria. So on your end, as a player, you should see this. This is what we call a tabla. These are all construction terms. We went out and interviewed a lot of our workforce to see what are the common words that are used in the industry, and this is what we came up with, right? So if you're the player, you get a tabla. Y'all should be able to hit shuffle, and you get a different tabla as you play. Me as a dealer, I get the deck of cards. So as I click and read out cards, what you're going to do as the player is find your card here. And then remember that story about the beans that I shared with you? Once you see the card on there, if you click on it, you're going to see that beautiful pinto bean show up there. So once you get 4 in a row as a player, then it's going to tell you that you've won Loteria. So we'll take a quick stab at playing a round or two of it. So I'm going to be the dealer and everyone else is the player. So you should have a tabla on there. So we'll start off here. And if you get Loteria, I'm not sure, are they able to unmute themselves and say Loteria?
We'll use the chat for that. So,
okay, so if y'all get Loteria,
first people to say Loteria in the chat will be the winners for
know that
today.
they won. All right, so we'll get started. So the first card is La Basura. And as we're playing this, you saw a picture there at one of our job sites. You know, it's a repetitive process, right? So as the dealer, we normally try to get the non-Spanish speaking person to be the dealer, and this is where we're bridging that gap and getting that connection with each other. So La Basura. Then you have Medidas, which is measurements. Excavadora. Remember, once you get 4 in a row, it's going to pop up and tell you Loteria, and just type it in there in the chat. Pipa, which is pipe. Pipa.
I'm definitely learning some Spanish.
Guantes, which is gloves.
I think I have the worst card possible. I haven't had any yet.
La
This may be rigged
gasolina.
against us, Tom.
La gasolina. La gasolina. Then we have capa. We build bridges, so that's the cap on the bridge. Capa.
Oh, I'm getting close.
All right. Then we have la grua, which is the crane. El topógrafo, which is the surveyor. Then we have barrera, barrera. Carretera. I noticed somebody else had mentioned there's different dialects, right, in the Spanish language. So there's some other people may use different terms for this. Anclaje is an anchor. Anclaje. Oil. Oh, Miss Tabitha Gaines.
Got a
won
Loteria.
Loteria. So one of the cool things with this app that we developed is, as you're playing in person, right, you have the actual cards. So we have the physical cards. So you can go back and double check to make sure that Miss Tabitha did win Loteria. But on the electronic version, if I go to my history here, it shows me all the cards that I dealt as we went through that. So again, this was just a cool idea for us to kind of bring in a little bit of the culture into our program, and it's now become part of our DNA here at Zachry. So that's round one. See how simple that was to go through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like we had 3 folks in the chat that yelled out, typed out Loteria. So it is
Nicole
Olympics week. It's Olympics right now. So we'll give the gold to Tabitha, the silver to Nicole, and the bronze to Kathy.
Yeah.
I love that. Abel, I have a question. So this is for, the construction part of your industry. Do you have, or the construction part of Zachry, do you have a different deck of cards for the hotel function?
Yeah, so the unique thing about our business, as Jason did it at the introduction, right, is we have a hospitality side to our business, and then we have an aggregate side to our business, and then we have the construction side. So our focus was on the construction, and we are actually in development now for the hospitality industry. where we have Loteria for the hospitality industry. And then we also have Loteria for the mining industry or the aggregate industry here at Zachry. So yes, Nina, a great question. We have 3 different versions of Loteria that we are working on. And it's great to see all this come together. I see a comment on there that Sharon said need one for the healthcare. We actually are in different phases of Loteria. So we actually call it the Loteria Experience. So the new version that we're coming out with is called the Loteria Experience. And as Eli mentioned, this is not just about playing a game. We have a whole program for folks to learn the language, and we have 4 levels that they go through and so forth. Right? This is just a component of it. We're definitely exploring different options with different industries, and right now we're focused on what we do again, which is the hospitality side. That one's actually going to be fun to go through. So it's fun working with the artists to put this stuff together. So yeah, great question, Nina.
And, I've got to say, so there, when you talked about healthcare already, you've got some folks in the audience here. They're saying that they're on board. They'll want that. There's definitely going to be some people, I think, reaching out to you to see if you can create Loteria cards for their different industries. So, yeah, a lot of positive feedback here. And I've got to say, this is definitely more fun than Duolingo. As much as I love the little cartoons talking to me, the engagement between folks is also a really, really fun aspect of this. Tom, did you see any questions in the comments that we needed to pull forward right now?
I don't think so. There have been more comments than questions that I've seen. If folks want to resurface a question that maybe they asked earlier that I missed, please go ahead and put that in the chat. One suggestion I had that I just thought of, over the years, people that have been particularly in corporate office spaces, there's often corporate bingo. It's sort of a spoof of regular bingo based on sort of business jargon. So you might want to do a humorous version of this. That's the Spanish versions of some of the jargony terms that we all use in business. That might work as well.
Yeah, copyright that quick. We're gonna steal your idea, Tom.
Yeah.
It would be wonderful just to hear from each of you, Jason, Eli, and Abel. What's the biggest impact that each of you has seen on your workforce? So Eli, maybe you want to go first, but the biggest impact that you've seen from functional Spanish on your workforce.
Yeah, I think what's amazing is if you know a little bit, it's not a little bit enough to be dangerous. But when you can just get a few messages across, it opens up something spectacular. People are nervous to connect, and we want it, we crave it. And if you feel like somebody's reaching out to you, it's so much easier to reach out to them. And what we noticed, we did one of our immersions just for people that speak Spanish. And what's interesting was when we asked who should go to this, they gave us high potential employees, but they said these people only speak Spanish. And we sat them down in a room, and Abel and I, we have a wonderful corporate ranch, family ranch, and we were sitting around sort of a campfire type thing and just asking everybody questions. And the English was surprisingly good. And the first question was, why are we doing this like English retreat? You already speak English. And the number one thing that came across was, if my supervisor would just speak to me in a little bit of language, I'd be more willing to try. And I think that's what's happening now, is that gap is starting to close really quickly because people are willing to, for lack of a better term, to look stupid in front of somebody else. We have to be open and vulnerable enough to make that happen.
Yeah, so just that little bit creates that psychological safety for both sides to be able to open up and communicate.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
And if it's okay, I'm going to continue with what Eli was just talking about, where we recognize that, a majority of them already did speak English. But for me, the biggest impact is seeing the internal promotions that have come from folks going through programs that we have to offer. And, you know, the language piece of it was one that has really helped us break down those barriers to where the foremen do feel more comfortable taking on that superintendent role, even though they don't speak perfect English, and just knowing that there's somebody else on the other side to support them with their language needs. So that's been the biggest impact for me that I think that I really enjoy seeing is the internal growth that we've seen within the organization.
That's incredible. So just the upward mobility within a target demographic for you. We do have one question from the audience from Carme Warren. Have any of you had issues or have you had any issues with non-Spanish speakers not buying into the program? And maybe this is a question for Jason, but for either one of you, how have you handled that if that's happened?
Yeah, that's a great question. And sometimes it's, you know, similar with ERGs or when you have groups that feel like you're given special treatment, but we really haven't. And I think it speaks to the fact that what this creates is it levels the playing field, the psychological safety, and making people feel respected. When you use it from a safety standpoint, and the focus is on just basic functional Spanish. A lot of our leaders, it's interesting that when you speak a few words, it's like, whoa, that person's bilingual. And sometimes they'll think you speak more than you do. Some of our leaders have encountered this. You show some respect and speak if you, some have been in situations where they, un poquito, right? They have to say just a little bit, but the effort is so much appreciated. And I think to answer the question, it hasn't, because our leaders recognize that these people are doing the hard work. And it's really the least we can do to try to say, hey, they're trying to learn English, like you've heard. It's the psychological safety. When one of our leaders speaks bad Spanish, the vulnerability and their willingness to do that, it creates a sense of a belonging, and it just makes everyone feel like they're on the same team. So it really is, because the effort isn't as much as we think it would be to just try. The effort of our leaders trying lets other people know that it's safe for them to try. So it seems like it could be something that, you know, they're in America, they need to speak English. But it's like, you know what, how long have you been trying to learn a language? Why don't you just give it an effort, and others will as well. So in our situation, very minimal. I'm sure there's a couple that, you know, maybe resent it, but it's by far the majority that we're aware of. They want to go to these immersions. We have a list of people that like, when's my turn? I want to go. It's just it's personally fulfilling and being able to connect more. That's why we'll be doing more of these immersion retreats and having people, again, the beginning of this was called Connecting with Your Crew. So it was centered on construction, but the key word is connecting. And it could be connecting with your team, with your patients, with your customers, connecting with whoever it is that is part of your circle.
That's incredible. And I mean, the video definitely showcased that this, the 2-day retreat is quite the immersion. So I can see how, if you might have been resistant, that you'd want to go. Just bringing it back, and we talked about this briefly earlier, but what percentage of your workforce are people of color?
At the craft, you want me to take that one, Jason?
Yeah, go ahead. If you want to go into the different levels, generally for all as a company, it's 2/3, but it's a little more in hospitality. But Abel?
Yeah, I can speak to the construction side. At the craft level, you know, it's about 5%. And then at the foreman level, you're looking about 8%. And then at the superintendent level, it's about 2%.
There was another question.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. There was another question earlier that I did want to surface from Margaret, and this maybe is for you, Abel, if you can recall. How hard was it to create the app? Like, how much time did that take? I'm not sure that we covered that.
Yeah, so the interesting thing was it started with the
Cards.
hard copy of it, and I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it's kind of blurry there, but
No, the paper cards, yeah.
Basically met with an individual that's an app developer, and we talked through the way the game is played and everything. I mean, I think we got it done within like 2.5 months. What took longer really was the art side of it, which is being updated and stuff right now. But yeah, it took about 2.5 months on the development side for the app.
Yeah, so quite doable. And then I had a question as well. I'm glad earlier you circled it back, Abel, to the point that was made at the outset about the promotion from the foreman level to the supervisor level. Do you guys have any other metrics on things that are sort of maybe engagement of either the corporate staff or the on-site staff, or retention, again, for either the corporate staff or the on-site staff? Have you seen any movement in those numbers, or if not yet, do you expect to?
Jason, you want to take that one?
I'm sorry, I got distracted. Someone said they recognize their, so on the chat. I apologize.
That's okay. So I'm just wondering if you've seen any movement yet, or if you expect to in the future from this program. And I know it's hard. It's just one variable amongst many to track, a learning program over. That's a famous problem in L&D. But to your engagement levels, your retention levels of any of your populations.
I think it would be to try to directly link that to, we haven't asked, specific enough questions, but from the projects, you saw pictures of one. From those that have embraced it more, we've seen engagement go up at the job sites that have done it. Because some, the project manager will sit down, they'll do it over lunch. I mean, you get what you put into it. So it's really based on how people lean into it, the engagement level they get at the different job sites. So
yeah, that's fair. I mean, if you were to track engagement at a job site or like a corporate office from over a period of time, pre and post the program being implemented, and if you saw a certain uptick in the places that have done it and don't see the same uptick in the places that haven't, then I think that's a fair evaluation. Yeah,
it's something we'll look into. We tried off-the-shelf stuff before. Our home office did one. And then that's where just after trying a lot of different things, it's like, let's develop something that's meaningful. And really the functional is the key word, that it uses the words in your industry and that it gives you a chance to practice. Those are both sides can practice English and Spanish. So that's what's we're really excited to share this and to explore it further within our own company.
Well, I just want to say thank you, Jason, Abel, and Eli. This is definitely a next practice, incredible innovation, innovative work that you guys are doing. So thank you for sharing this with us. And I do know that you are now starting to offer your immersion programs beyond the Zachry community. So Zeta is going to share a link for that if anyone is interested in finding out more. And you do have the contact information for Jason, Abel, and Eli if you're interested in just finding out how to use Loteria within your own organization. Thank you, all of you. And Tom, I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Yeah, it really is an impressive, as you said, next practice. I think it's one, obviously it's working for Spanish learning here and English learning, vice versa, but it would work for any global corporation where you've got either language learning that's needed or maybe just cultural elements. Something very similar could be done beyond language per se. So thank all of you. Thank you, Jason, Eli, Abel. Great sharing today. Great example of what we like to call a next practice here at I4CP.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick reminder, all of our Next Practice weekly sessions are available for recertification credits. So if you're an HR professional with a cert from either SHRM or HRCI, just jot down the relevant program ID or activity ID, and you'll be all set there. And I wanted to reiterate what Nina said earlier on the call. This was an example of something that was submitted as a Next Practice award at I4CP. Our conference Next Practice is now, which I teased up earlier and before we got going with the main program today. At that event, we highlight usually a dozen Next Practice Award winners in Scottsdale in March. And we get way more submissions than the ultimate winners are. This was a great example of one. But if you're with an organization, a member of I4CP, and you can think of a program in any area of HR, could be L&D like this one was, but it could be talent acquisition, total rewards, DE&I, HR strategy, HR technology, anything. We would love to hear from you. Applications are always open for Next Practice Award submissions. So please be thinking about that. As you saw what was involved with one winner here today, would love for you to think about that for next year's conference as well. With that, I'm going to close things out. Thank you, Nina. Great conversation today. Thank you again, Jason, Eli, and Abel. And thank you, Zeta, as always. Look forward to seeing everyone back again next week. Until then, have a great rest of your week and weekend coming up.